He had driven 4 hours to see land he intended to buy, not visit, buy. The GPS had given up somewhere past the second covered bridge, and he'd rolled down the window of his rented Escalade to ask directions from the only person visible on the road, a young woman walking the gravel shoulder in a dark cape dress, a white cap pinned neatly over her hair, and boots that carried the dry mud of morning chores the way boots do when the work starts, before the sun does. She looked maybe 26, maybe younger. She was carrying a wooden produce crate with both hands, and she did not stop walking when he slowed beside her. He asked about the bridge at the north end of the Raber property, the one his contractor needed to cross with a 14-ton load of excavation equipment. She set the crate down on the gravel. She looked at the bridge, then the road, then him, the way people look at a thing they have already calculated and are simply confirming. "That bridge," she said, "won't hold it." He thanked her in the tone men use with young women who volunteer opinions they weren't asked for, and drove on. 38 minutes later, Daniel Ashworth, Senior Acquisitions Director for Vantage Land Group, holder of 2 development licenses and an MBA from Georgetown, was standing on the shoulder of a county road, watching his contractor's 14-ton excavator list sideways into a drainage ditch as the culvert beneath it folded in a direction culverts are not meant to fold. The young woman in the white cap was already at the fence line. She had come across the near pasture at a run when she heard the sound, a sound she had been waiting 5 years to hear and had hoped, every one of those years, she would not. She was through the gate and crouching at the broken head wall before Daniel had finished his first phone call. She pressed 2 fingers against the fractured concrete. She did not close her eyes. She looked directly at the failure point, tracking something Daniel could not read, with the particular fluency of someone who has been reading this exact structure for a long time. She said something in Pennsylvania Dutch to the older man who appeared behind her, her father, from the farm up the lane, and the older man turned back at a steady walk. Daniel Ashworth watched her, and did not yet understand what he was watching. He would. Her name was Hannah Lapp. She was 28 years old. She had been born in the farmhouse at the end of the long gravel lane, the same farmhouse where her father had been born, and his mother before him, in a line of laps that ran back through Lancaster County like a root system, invisible from the surface, holding everything up from underneath. The land had been in the family for 83 years. Her great-grandfather had bought it in 1941 with money saved from 11 years of dairy work and a loan from the Bishop's Fund that had been repaid with interest in 3 years. She knew all of this the way she knew the fence posts, not because she had studied it, but because it was part of the ground she stood on. She woke at 4:30. She fed the horses before her own breakfast, not from discipline but from habit, and not from habit alone, but from the understanding that the horses did not eat on credit, and neither did the farm. She could walk the east pasture blindfolded and tell you, by the feel of the ground under her feet, where the drainage problem was going to be worst in March. She had been telling her father this since she was 12. He had started listening when she was 14, and the drainage problem had been corrected the following spring. She had also left. Not forever, but long enough to matter. At 19, during her Rumspringa, she had gone to stay with her aunt in Philadelphia. She had planned a year. She had stayed 4. She enrolled in night courses at a community college. Civil engineering fundamentals, structural analysis, soil mechanics, because the work made sense to her in a way that felt less like learning and more like recognition. She sat in those classrooms and found technical names for things she had understood since childhood. Why the east field drained wrong, why the old covered bridge downstream flexed differently in February than in July, why a hillside that looked stable could fail quietly over 20 years if nobody watched it. In her 3rd year, she took a job as a field technician with Keystone Survey Associates, a regional firm that did infrastructure assessments for townships and county road departments. She logged soil profiles, flagged load-bearing anomalies, wrote condition reports on culverts and bridge decks across 4 counties. She was good at it, Her supervising engineer noted it in writing. Exceptional lateral analysis instinct. He recommended her for advanced certification. She did not pursue the certification. In the spring of her fourth year, 2019, when she was 23, something in her finished what it needed to do and turned back toward the place it understood best. She came home. She took the kneeling. She put the coursework certificates and the field technician badge in an envelope in the cedar chest at the foot of her bed, and did not speak of them again. She was not ashamed of them. She was not defined by them either. She was Hannah Lapp, and the farm was hers to tend and eventually to inherit. And that was not a small thing. It was, in fact, the largest thing she knew. The cedar chest also held something else. A deed addendum signed 2 years ago when her father's health made the transfer practical rather than symbolic. The farm, the ridge access lane, the timber lot above the Raber property, which shared a boundary with the county road at the north end of the watershed. Her name was on that deed. Had been for 24 months. She had not told anyone outside the family. There was no reason to. The land did not need announcing. The bridge had been a problem since the spring she came home. The county resurfaced the road in the summer of 2019, a few months after Hannah returned, and replaced the original timber stringer crossing with a precast concrete culvert. She stood at the fence line and watched the crew work, and knew from 2 years of infrastructure fieldwork, from the soil profiles she had logged herself along this exact creek bank, from the simple arithmetic of span to depth ratio, that the culvert was undersized for the road's load class, and that the headwall placement was going to create a shear failure within 3 to 5 years under freeze-thaw cycling. She wrote to the county engineer that autumn. She did not sign the letter. She had taken the kneeling 3 months prior and was not ready to explain how an Amish woman in Strasbourg Township knew what she knew. But she cited the span calculations, the freeze-thaw coefficient for the soil class, the projected headwall rotation under repeated dynamic loading from the milk trucks that use this road twice daily. The county sent a form letter back. She watched the bridge every season after that. Spring mud, fall freeze. The hairline crack appeared at the headwall's northeast corner in the spring of 2021, right where the shear would initiate, exactly as she had calculated. She noted the widening each autumn. She sent a second letter in the fall of 2021, this time through Bishop Reel, who added his name to it and presented it at the next township meeting. She sent a third in the spring of 2023 with updated measurements and photographs that the bishop's nephew took on her behalf. The road committee referred all 3 to the county inspector's scheduled cycle. That had been 18 months ago. She thought about the bridge often. The way you think about a thing you cannot fix alone, with a specific low-grade frustration that is not quite despair, but lives in the same neighborhood. She thought about other things when she stood there too. The 4 years in Philadelphia. The courses she had taken and understood quickly. The survey work, which had been satisfying in the way that skilled labor is satisfying, but which had left her at the end of each day with the feeling of someone who has been using their left hand, competent but not native. The grief was different, quieter than she'd expected. She had left a person behind in Philadelphia, not a romantic story. She would not make it that, even to herself. A friendship, close and honest, with a woman named Carla, who had understood Hannah in the specific way that people understand each other when they are both trying to figure out who they are at the same time. Carla had asked her not to go. Hannah had gone anyway. She had not written. She did not own a phone. She thought about Carla the way you think about a sound you heard once in a place you will not return to, clearly, and without the ability to do anything about it. When Daniel Ashworth's rented Escalade slowed beside her on the gravel road, she recognized the situation before he spoke. She had seen that vehicle, that model, that color, parked at the Raber farmhouse twice in the past month. She knew who Vantage Land Group was. She had looked them up at the library in town when the Rabers mentioned the offer in August. What they built, where they built it, what the equipment requirements would be for the site preparation phase. She had already walked the culvert that morning, as she did every Monday in the shoulder seasons. The northeast headwall crack had widened by 4 millimeters since October. The freeze-thaw cycle this year had been hard. She told him the truth about the bridge. He thanked her in a way that meant he had already decided not to listen, and drove on. She watched the Escalade disappear around the bend. She picked up the produce crate. She thought, he will find out, or he will not. Either way, the bridge will tell him. She had not expected to be the one standing there when it did. The excavator had crossed about 2/3 of the span when the culvert gave. Concrete fails in sequence, not all at once. A shear crack becomes a rotation. A rotation becomes a load path that no longer exists. The load does not disappear. It redirects, fast and without negotiation, to whatever is adjacent. In this case, nothing adjacent was willing. The head wall rotated 11 inches at the northeast corner, the corner Hannah had been measuring since 2021, and the culvert's front left bearing dropped into the gap. The excavator's left track lost contact. The operator cut power and tried to reverse. Too late, and the wrong direction. The rear of the machine swung wide, and the embankment caught it. Nobody was hurt. The operator had enough time and instinct to brace. Hannah had been in the near pasture when she heard it. Not a crash. The sound was specific and low, the concussive thud of mass meeting resistance at the wrong angle, followed by the groan of a structure completing a failure it had been rehearsing for years. She knew it before she understood it. She was over the fence in under a minute, her father following from the barn with a rope coil because he had learned to move when she moved and ask questions afterward. The scene was exactly what she had known it would be. Daniel Ashworth stood on the road shoulder, phone to his ear, jacket still clean, looking at the excavator in the ditch with the expression of a man watching an expensive mistake happen to him personally. The operator was out of the cab and unhurt, already on his own phone. Hannah crouched at the broken head wall. She ran 2 fingers along the shear face, read the concrete's grain, confirmed the failure plane. The northeast corner had gone exactly as projected. The remainder of the span was stable, but its effective load rating was now reduced to passenger vehicles only. Carefully, one at a time. She said to her father, in Pennsylvania Dutch, "Get the reflective triangles from the barn, 50 yards out in both directions, then go to Amos. Tell him the culvert went, and the north road is closed to anything over 2 tons. Her father went. Daniel ended his call. He looked at her for the first time. Actually looked, not just processed. He saw the white cap, the dark cape dress, plain at the collar, no ornament, the boots, the hands, which were doing something to the broken concrete with a methodical precision that did not match the image he had assembled of her in the 38 minutes since he'd driven past her on the road. "Is the rest of it going to go?" he said. "Not today." She stood, wiped the concrete dust from her fingers with the edge of her apron. But nothing heavier than a pickup crosses this until it's replaced. That machine isn't moving under its own power. You'll need a recovery crew and a detour. I need that excavator on the north parcel by Thursday. She looked at him. She had a face that was still young enough to show everything, and had already learned enough to choose what it showed. The patience in it was not performed. It was the patience of someone who has watched a specific problem approach for years and has already thought through every available response. "The excavator," she said, "is not crossing this bridge. There has to be another access. 3 seasonal lanes and the road you just closed." She looked at the ditch. "I told you about the bridge." He was 41. He had spent 20 years acquiring land, managing contractors, reading people across negotiating tables. He was not accustomed to being corrected by a young woman in a plain dress at a Lancaster County roadside with concrete dust on her apron. That was the specific texture of his error. It would become clearer to him later. "Who are you?" he said. She tucked the hem of the apron back into place. "A neighbor," she said. "I told you about the bridge." Daniel Ashworth did not accept setbacks from people who did not appear on his org chart. He got back on his phone. He called the project manager, who called the county infrastructure office, who confirmed an incident report would be required and that the road was now a county matter. He called Vantage's structural firm in Harrisburg and described the failure. He was told a senior engineer could be on site by the following afternoon. He said the following afternoon was not acceptable. He said he needed a same-day assessment of alternative access routes because he had a project schedule, delay penalties in his contractor agreement, and a board presentation Thursday morning. The Harrisburg engineer said he understood and would call back within the hour. Daniel hung up. He looked at the young woman who had moved to the south abutment and was crouching again, and he felt the specific frustration of someone who needs information and is watching a person who clearly has it decline to present it in any form he could use. "What are the alternate routes?" he said. She answered without turning. Amos Yoder's back lane connects to the north parcel from the western boundary, but it crosses Miller's Creek at a 24-inch pipe culvert rated for 8 tons. Your excavator is 14. He paused. "How do you know my equipment weight, track width and boom configuration?" She stood. 14 tons is an estimate. If I'm wrong, give me the correct number. He did not give her the correct number. Vantage's survey plat shows 4 access points on the property record, he said. 3 are seasonal dirt tracks that won't carry that equipment in October. The 4th is what you're looking at. She met his eyes steadily. "I told you." A pickup truck slowed at the reflective triangles her father had placed, then stopped. 2 buggies had already halted at the north end of the road. A small gathering was forming, neighbors drawn by the particular gravity of a road going down, which meant milk schedules disrupted and school van routes changed, and ambulance access to the north farms uncertain until further notice. An older woman in a dark dress and black bonnet stood at the edge of the group, watching Hannah with an expression that was not simple concern. It was the expression of someone watching a moment they have been quietly expecting arrive. That was Martha Reel, the bishop's wife, 71 years old, who had known Hannah since before she left, and had known what Hannah knew without ever asking her to use it. She had the patience of women who understand that capable people reveal themselves when the moment is right, and not before. Hannah caught her eye across the road. Martha gave her one small nod. Hannah turned back to Daniel. "If you want to understand the access options," she said, "I have survey maps at the farm. I can show you what's viable and what isn't." "You have survey maps of this watershed. I drew them." He looked at the cap, the dress, the apron dusty at the hem, the road she had known better than he had, the bridge she had warned him about. "Okay," he said. "Show me." The farmhouse was half a mile up the lane. Daniel followed Hannah's pace in the suspended impatience of a man making a considerable effort not to check his phone every 40 seconds. He checked it every 40 seconds. The barn smelled of horses and dry timber and old stone, the particular mineral cold of a foundation that has been sound for a very long time. Hannah moved through it without adjusting for his presence, around the workbench to a wide, shallow drawer built into the cabinet beneath the window. She pulled it open. Inside, survey maps, flat-folded, labeled in small, even handwriting. Year, quadrant, subject. She found the right one without searching. She spread it on the workbench. Daniel leaned in. The map was not a property plat. It had topographic contours in pencil, drainage flow lines in blue ink, load-bearing annotations at every road crossing and culvert in the watershed, soil classification notes along the field margins, frost heave risk ratings by road segment, seasonal viability windows for each lane. Vantage's surveying firm had charged him $38,000 for the plat in the Raber acquisition package. It had a tenth of what was on this map. "Where did this come from?" he said. "I made it." She traced the northern boundary with one finger. "This ridge lane, here, is the only viable route for your equipment. Limestone base. My father put it down in 2010 when we expanded the timber operation. It'll carry 14 tons if the ground isn't saturated." She glanced at him. "We've had 11 dry days. It isn't." He studied the map. "It crosses 2 drainage channels," she said. "Both are timber frame culverts. The eastern one I rebuilt in 2022. I designed the replacement and my father built to spec. Load rating is 16 tons. The western one is original to the lane, 2010. I assess it every spring. It's sound." He was quiet a moment. "Why?" he said carefully. "Do you know the load ratings of culverts on a private farm lane?" She folded the map back along its creases. Precise, no wasted motion. "Because I assess them," she said. "You remember what you assess." He looked at her. She looked back. And then he made the mistake he had been building toward since he rolled down the window of the Escalade and thanked her in that particular tone. "I'll need to discuss the easement for this lane directly with the property owner," he said. "Is your father available?" She did not move. "My father," she said, "does not hold the deed." Silence. "I'm sorry?" "The farm was transferred to me 2 years ago." She laid her hand flat on the map. The farmhouse, the east and west pastures, the ridge lane, and the timber lot above the Raber boundary. My name is on the deed, has been for 24 months. He blinked. "The Raber property," he said slowly, "is accessed through your land. Through land I own, yes. Vantage's entire equipment plan assumes county road access via the culvert. The culvert I told you about this morning." He put both hands on the edge of the workbench. He was a man who was accustomed to rooms reorganizing themselves around his arrival. He was watching, instead, a room that had been organized around a different center of gravity the entire time. And that center was a 28-year-old woman in a white cap who had been telling him the truth since before he'd decided she was worth listening to. "Miss Lapp," he said, "I owe you an apology." She waited. "I dismissed you this morning. You were correct about the bridge, and I drove past what you said because—" He stopped. "Because of how you looked, and where we were. That was wrong." She studied him with the same accuracy she had applied to the culvert. "Yes," she said. "It was. I'd like to discuss an easement for the ridge lane. Your terms." She looked at the map. "My terms begin with the county replacing the bridge." Her voice did not rise. "Not patching. Replacing. With proper engineering review, correct culvert sizing, and documented load rating. I have 5 years of observation records, 2 sets of calculations, and 3 letters I sent to the county that I can put in front of whoever needs to see them." A pause. "The community uses that road. Not for development, for the milk pickup, for the school van in January, for the ambulance when someone needs it." He hadn't expected the specificity of it. "I can make calls," he said. "Vantage has a relationship with the county commissioner's office." "I know Vantage does," she said. "That is why I'm telling you." He looked at her steadily. "You knew who we were before today. The Rabers told me about the offer in August." She set the map aside. "I went to the county office in September and filed the bridge assessment again, with updated measurements. They filed it. And did nothing. And did nothing." A pause. "A company with Vantage's liability exposure creates a different kind of pressure than a woman in a plain dress. I knew that. I was waiting for the right moment. The excavator in the ditch. I did not want that. No one was hurt, and I am grateful for it." Her expression did not shift. "But the incident report your carrier files tomorrow will ask questions the county cannot answer with a form letter." He was quiet. She was 28 years old, and she had been running this patiently, accurately, for 5 years, and she had just told him so to his face with the directness of someone who sees no advantage in pretending otherwise. "Miss Lapp," he said, "I'd like to hire you. As a consultant. Site access, watershed assessment, infrastructure documentation. Your credentials don't need to be on a stamp. You'd be compensated." She considered it for a moment that was not hesitation, but calculation. "The bridge comes first," she said. "That is the condition, not a negotiation point." "Understood. And the easement will include a creek bank protection setback, 100 feet from the waterline. I've been watching that bank for 5 years. It will not hold your grading plan as filed." He blinked. "How do you know our grading plan?" "I know what the bank can hold," she said. "And I know Vantage builds mixed-use commercial. The grading follows from that." A pause. "Correct me if I'm wrong." She was not wrong. He knew it before she finished the sentence. He did not ask her for the documentation that evening. He found it on his own, the way people find things when they finally decide to look. At the inn 6 miles away, he gave Hannah's name to Vantage's due diligence coordinator for a routine title search. What came back 3 hours later was the deed, the adjacent parcel record, and a flag on the name itself. Hannah Ruth Lapp, born 1996, Strasburg Township, Lancaster County. The Pennsylvania Infrastructure Survey database listed a field technician certification issued in 2018 by the Regional Survey Institute in Philadelphia. 3 completed infrastructure assessment projects, 2018 to 2019. 1 supervisor's note from Keystone Survey Associates. Exceptional lateral analysis instinct. Recommended for advanced certification if she continues in the field. She had not continued in the field. She had come home in the spring of 2019. The coordinator also found the county letters not through the county's own records, but through the certified mail receipts Hannah had kept, which appeared in a drainage complaint Bishop Reel had filed with the township in 2022. All 3 letters, dates, receipts, and the county's form letter responses. 5 years of documented, ignored, accurate warnings. The file arrived at 11:14 at night. Daniel sat with it for a long time. He sat with the specific discomfort of a man reconstructing a morning he had misread from the first moment. The young woman with the produce crate, the white cap, the way she had set the crate down on the gravel and looked at the bridge before she answered, not pausing to think, but confirming what she already knew. She had been confirming what she already knew. In the morning he drove back to the farm. He walked in from the gate because knocking on a car horn felt wrong, and he had enough calibration left to know it. Hannah was in the east pasture, walking the fence line. She saw him at the gate and finished the section she was on before she came to meet him. He handed her the printout, the assembled file. She looked at it without surprise. The way people look at an outcome they prepared for and are simply watching arrive. "The supervisor's note," he said. He called it exceptional. He recommended advanced certification. She folded the printout once. "I didn't pursue it. I know. You came home." She looked at the pasture, at the ridge lane through the tree line, pale limestone in the October light. "Why didn't you say any of this when I stopped this morning?" he said. "You knew who I was. You knew about the bridge. You could have told me everything on the road." She was quiet for a moment that had weight to it. "You'd already decided what I was," she said. "A girl on a gravel road in a plain dress. If I had told you about the certification and the letters and the deed, you would have thought I was trying to impress you." She paused. "I wasn't. I was telling you the bridge would fail. That was the relevant information." He had nothing to say to that. I told the county the same thing, she said, 3 times. They filed it. She handed the printout back. Some information has to prove itself. The county bridge inspection happened 11 days after the incident. This was not coincidence. Daniel's call to the commissioner's office the morning after the failure was the second call of the day. The first had come from Vantage's legal team at 7:15. The third came from the project insurance carrier's regional director at 10. Commissioner Garland, who had received 3 letters about this culvert over 5 years and responded to all 3 with form letters, found his schedule suddenly reorganized around Lancaster County infrastructure. A licensed inspection firm arrived on day 5. Their preliminary report, submitted on day 9, identified the same failure modes Hannah had documented: the shear initiation at the northeast headwall, the span-to-depth ratio deficiency, the freeze-thaw projection. They cited no prior correspondence. The county had located 2 of Hannah's 3 letters and misidentified the third as a duplicate, and made no reference to any of them in the official record. The third letter was in Hannah's cedar chest with the certified mail receipt. She had not offered it to anyone yet. She would, when it was useful. The county announced an emergency bridge replacement on day 11, funded from infrastructure reserve. The commissioner issued a statement about the county's commitment to rural road safety. He did not mention the 5 years of letters. The regional paper ran it on page 4. A reporter came to the farm 2 days later. Hannah came to the gate, heard him out, and said she had no comment for publication. She went back to the fence line. The easement agreement with Vantage was signed on day 16. Hannah read every clause at the kitchen table while Daniel sat across from her, and he did not rush her, because he had learned at some cost that this was a woman for whom patience was not a courtesy, but a method. She made 3 amendments in pencil before signing. He accepted all 3. They were correct. The terms: bridge replacement prior to any equipment use of the ridge lane, creek bank setback of 100 feet, a per-use access fee deposited into a community infrastructure account administered by Bishop Reel, a right of first refusal for Hannah on any future easement modifications. Daniel had not proposed the right of first refusal. She had added it. He signed. When the pens were capped, he looked around the kitchen, the wood stove, the kerosene lamp, the window above the sink framing the pasture, and, beyond the tree line, the pale thread of the ridge lane. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "You can ask. The survey work, you were good at it." He chose his words. "Do you miss it?" She was quiet for a moment, not composing a polite answer, finding an honest one. "I miss the precision of it," she said. "The way a load calculation has one correct answer, and you either found it or you didn't." She looked at the window. "I don't miss the rest." "What's the rest?" "Explaining myself. Constantly." She said it without bitterness, with the flat accuracy of an observation confirmed many times over. To the senior engineers, to the contractors, to the clients. Who I was, why I was there, whether I actually knew what I was saying. A pause. "Here I know what I know, and the land confirms it. Nobody argues with the drainage pattern." He was quiet. "Until yesterday," she said, and something in it was not quite humor, but lived next to it. He almost smiled. "You're going to be difficult to work with," he said. "I mean that as a compliment." "I know what you mean," she said. A letter arrived 4 weeks later, not email, paper, forwarded through her aunt's Philadelphia address. The return address was a street in West Philadelphia that Hannah knew from memory, because she had walked past it several hundred times over 4 years. She sat with it on the porch steps in the late afternoon light without opening it for a few minutes. Her father was visible in the far pasture. The horses grazed in the near field. Down the ridge, the county crew was into its second week of bridge work, the sound of equipment carrying faintly in the cold air. She opened the letter. Carla. Of course. She had seen the county announcement in the local paper. It had grown from page 4 into something more substantial once the insurance investigation began, and the commissioner's office became less comfortable with the official narrative. The item had named the property owner, Hannah Lapp, Strasbourg Township. Carla had searched the name the way people search for someone they have been thinking about for years and have not let themselves contact. The letter was 2 pages. Honest in the specific way Carla had always been honest. Direct without hardness, careful without management. She said she had thought about writing for a long time. She said she did not want anything from Hannah that Hannah was not prepared to give. She said she was glad the bridge was being fixed. She said she had always thought Hannah would end up doing something like this, whatever this turned out to be. She left 2 addresses at the bottom, Philadelphia and email. Hannah read it twice. She sat with it in the particular quiet that comes at the end of the day's work and before the evening chores begin. A pause in the rhythm, brief and complete. She went inside, found paper and a pen in the kitchen drawer. She sat at the table and wrote back. She did not say everything. There was too much for a letter, and some of it she did not have words for yet, and some she was not ready to offer in writing. But she wrote enough. She wrote that she was glad the letter had come. She wrote that she was well, that the land was good this year and the bridge was going to be done right this time, and she had made sure of that. She wrote, I am still working out what it means to have 2 true things at once. I don't think I'm the only one who finds it difficult. She sealed the envelope and set it on the counter for the morning. She went out to the evening chores, because the horses did not eat on credit, and neither did the farm, and these things did not pause because a letter had arrived, or a bridge was being repaired, or a company from the city had come and underestimated her and learned otherwise. The work was always there. She had always found that steadying. The bridge opened on a Tuesday in November. Cold and clear, the kind of morning that arrives in November like a statement. Hannah walked down to the road before the crew, while the frost was still on the grass, and the light was still low and amber against the new concrete. She pressed her hand against the head wall, solid, level, the northeast corner clean and square where it had failed 11 months of measurements ago. The culvert sized correctly for the road class, the load rating documented in the inspection record, numbers that matched, to within rounding, the calculations she had sent to the county in 3 letters over 5 years. She stayed there for a moment. She did not feel triumph. That was not the right word. She felt the particular satisfaction of a thing being correct that had been wrong for a long time. Structural, plain, verifiable. The same feeling she got when a drainage problem she had diagnosed finally received its correction, and the water moved where it was supposed to move. The crew foreman, a woman in her 40s with a clipboard and a hard hat, arrived at 7:30 and walked the span before opening the road. She paused at the northeast head wall, crouched, examined something in the concrete. Then she looked up and found Hannah at the fence line. You documented the original failure mode, she said. I read the county file. The shear prediction. That was yours. Yes, it was right. I know, Hannah said. The foreman nodded. She went back to the road. Amos Yoder's milk truck crossed at 8:15, heavy with the morning collection. Hannah watched from the fence line. The culvert did not move. The head wall did not flex. The load path was clean, and the truck went across and kept going, and nothing happened. Because when a structure is built correctly, nothing happening is exactly what is supposed to happen. She walked home. The horses needed feeding. The west fence had a post that had worked loose in the first hard frost and wanted resetting before the next one. There was a section of the ridge lane she intended to walk before the Vantage equipment runs began next week. She wanted to check the western culvert's response after the autumn rain. She had work. She had always had work. The letter from Carla had been answered. She did not know yet what would come back, or when, or in what form. She did not need to know today. Some structures are built slowly, in stages, with the understanding that the first piece does not carry everything. It only makes it possible for the next piece to be placed. She had learned this from bridges, from land, from years of watching things that needed repair refuse to announce themselves loudly and wait instead for someone patient enough to read them. She had always been patient enough. The two parts of her life, the one in the cedar chest with the certification and the supervisor's note, and the one in the east pasture walking the fence line before breakfast, did not collapse into each other. They did not stop being two separate, true things. She had spent years waiting for them to resolve, and they had not, and she had finally stopped waiting and simply continued with both of them forward. It was not a perfect arrangement. It was an honest one. Some women carry the world quietly, not because they lack words for it, because they have learned that the world is not always listening, and so they build the record, and they keep the receipts, and they wait for the moment when the truth they have been carrying becomes heavy enough to prove itself. And when that moment comes, they don't announce it. They just let the concrete speak.